Hello there, digital world, and welcome to another Spliced In Later. Well, we're going to be doing something a little bit different today. Normally, I'll pick a movie and we'll talk about a movie. Maybe I'll do a countdown, maybe I'll do a review, maybe I'll do a showcase on something or another. But for this one, I want to do it, and it's important to get this information out across to all the lovers of film and TV out there. But the way I've approached it has changed a lot in terms of production. Basically, I wanted to do it one way, but on careful consideration and with the way copyright is dealt with on things like YouTube and Spotify, and using one thing to substitute for another, basically, it's not going to work the way I thought it might. So if this episode comes off a bit short, if it sounds like I don't really know what I'm talking about, it might be not much different than my other episodes. It's a little bit all over the place. This is less me giving my knowledge of something. Rather, it's just me saying, this is something good. This is something specific about film and TV that should be appreciated. Here are some examples of it being good. But otherwise, go check it out for yourself. A very rambling, very confusing introduction, I'm sure. So let's just get right down into it before I get lost too much. Because today what I want to talk about is the use of music in film mostly, but also TV, and the work of composers to contribute to the overall success or failure of a particular film or TV show. Now, the reason I'm taking the time to talk about this is because whichever way you slice it, however you look at it, music composed by composers or singers, songwriters, whatever, through film is, in most cases, what can make or break a film, what can make it memorable, what can establish its identity, its character, what can elevate our emotions depending on how we're supposed to be feeling watching it. I've always known for a fact when I was growing up that there were certain tunes from certain films that I would remember, that would be stuck in my head, that would make me feel certain ways, and would ultimately ring true for me whether I appreciated the film or the TV show in a positive or a negative way, and what would ultimately bring me back to it for a rewatch or to tell other people about the products that I had been sampling in the film world. It's important to understand as well, and I know this for a fact, that you don't have to be a music aficionado to appreciate music in film. You don't have to know how to write music. You don't have to be able to play guitar or piano or the harmonica or anything like that to appreciate it. You don't have to know the fancy names of all the different people contributing to music. You don't have to recognize a composer in every different film. You just have to connect with the film music. It is not whether you understand the production into it, behind the scenes, whatever. It is just your connection to it, how you feel, what makes you think, what makes you feel. And it's the music in film that pushes that feeling forward. Without music in most films, it's going to lose that sense of memorability or that sense of identity that is so very important. For people out there thinking, I haven't really paid that much attention to music, I don't really think too much about it in the movies, it doesn't really matter what music's on in the background, I'm just there for the movies. Take a moment, think about your favorite films, your favorite franchises, things you've seen recently, and when you cast your mind back, in most cases or not, a tune will appear in your head, whether you like it or not. And it's because it's part of that thing you like, and it's what's helping you remember. It's what that connection to the experience of seeing the film. Very complicated way I'm trying to explain it, but it's very simple when you get right down to it. Music is essential. Even for movies that try to use it less or more. The Quiet Place, for example. A Quiet Place, when I saw that, was built on a huge precipice of it's very quiet. There's just what's in front of you. We don't use music very much. It's just important to the story to appreciate the quiet, which is very true. But I found when I watched it that in the instances where the monsters were attacking or when danger was approaching, music still found its way into the film. Chase scenes, suspense, action, it was in there one way or another. And then you have big space opera stuff where music is essential. Music is never not playing through the whole runtime of the film. In essence, because of that, for some people who are really into the whole music scene, you can go to the Sydney Opera House, or if you're in another country, another place where they do the music, and watch an entire film with the music played live in front of you, and the music doesn't let up because it is part of the film. And every time that little bit of music starts up, you go, I remember this bit. This music accompanies something specific that has happened in the movie I'm watching. And from my memories, I was either really happy that this was happening, really sad, really anxious, uncomfortable, expectant, excited, all that jazz. So it's very, very important that music is done well and effectively in films. And 9 times out of 10, it works. Very rarely have I gone to a film and thought, I'm not liking this. In a lot of cases, it's comedy where the music is not as important as the actual comedy that's in front of you. But if they don't gel well together, at least in my case, it tends to trip at the finish line for me. Now, my original plan for this episode was I had narrowed down 5 film composers, 5 very famous film composers. I had an assortment of films that these people have applied music to, and I was just going to play you a bit of music from each of these and sort of explain why they're good, or see if you guys can remember the music or whatever. They're very different categories, what I've got them narrowed down to, so we're going to be a variety of music. But to avoid the copyright, because it's a lot of effort to find all that music, to find the precise bit I want to play it, to splice it all together into this recording here, to upload it, to have it up on the interwebs, just for it to immediately be pulled down with a copyright infringement would be a very devastating outcome. So we're going to play it safe and not do that. And I apologize if that leads to a very boring, unexciting episode, because basically what I'm about to do now is just list those composers, say what is specifically about them that I appreciate and think is good and powerful for the movies that they're provided for, mention those movies, and then move on. However, if you recognize these composers, if you recognize these movies, if your memory is jogged hearing what I'm about to talk about, then by all means, get on the YouTubes, get on the Spotify. These soundtracks for all these movies and these composers are available readily everywhere. It is not hard to find them. Often you can find full pieces of music that go on for 20 minutes from particular movies. And I highly recommend it. At the end of this, have a look, think what your favorite movies are, remember the music from those movies, go back and have a look. I know there are specific listeners out here who are going to hear their favorite films in this bunch that I'm about to mention, and they're going to remember their favorite music from that. And then hopefully, at the end of a long, hard day at work, you're going to go and have a listen. Or not. You may tune out halfway through going, well, this is boring, I'm going somewhere else. In which case, no worries. I'll see you next week. But for now, let's list these composers, let's list a couple of movies, and let's just have some fun. Let's just enjoy remembering and try and think of the music in our heads as we go forward. So for our categories, our first category we're going to look into, I'm going to pick the unfortunately deceased composer, James Horner. Now I assume for a lot of people, when I say the name of the person, it probably may not ring true immediately. I'm not really familiar with that name. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But I'm sure when I start listing some movies, you go, oh, okay, cool. And you'll see the correlation between the two. Or not. We'll see how we go. For this first example, for James Horner, the music that he has done for his movies is of a very grand, epic scale, with a lot of essence on Celtic rhythm and power for historical moments and armies and inspirational moments in time. If that doesn't make any sense, don't worry, I'll give you some examples. For James Horner, he used, very sadly he has passed, drums, really powerful, uplifting music, very Scottish, to really hammer home the epicness of what he is encompassing. A lot of his movies are historical moments that have happened in the past, well, obviously historical moments that happened in the past, but very relevant moments in history, things that are remembered to this day. Very long movies, very movies that have a very long story from start to finish, lots of different characters, lots of different moving parts, lots of different places. In most cases, there are lots of ups and downs in the movies, which means the music has to both be uplifting and exciting and dramatic and powerful, and then immediately make you feel depressed, defeated, downcast, loss of hope, and then we'll swing back up again. The examples I picked for James Horner, First, we had Braveheart, which, if you're unfamiliar with Braveheart, it's the film about Mel Gibson playing William Wallace and the Scottish Rebellion. James Horner absolutely brought to life the feeling of the Scottish Highlands, the Scottish clans, them going to war, Mel Gibson's William Wallace sense of identity, patriotism, comedy where it was needed, where he was outwitting the English, but also sadness when friends and family were being killed in front of him. We also had A Beautiful Mind, starring Russell Crowe as John Nash, an absolutely brilliant mathematician. I want to say mathematician. I'm not really familiar with the science and numbers, but he was just one of the most brilliant people in the world. He was able to see equations and patterns. He could see constellations in the stars everywhere. Incredible stuff. But with genius came mental history problems, the ability to not tell the difference between reality and hallucinations, seeing conspiracies, unable to tell who was real and who was a figment of his imagination. And the music, again, was that combination of the magic of being so gifted and seeing anything in the stars, combined with a sense of hopelessness when he cannot tell if someone he's talking to is his wife or he's made them up completely, if his friend he's known all his life is actually just a figment of his imagination. A personal favorite of mine is the movie Troy, a very epic long movie starring Brad Pitt as Achilles, and is basically a very dramatized depiction of the siege of Troy, the horse of Troy, Achilles, Hector, Agamemnon, all those Greek and Trojan heroes. A very great film, absolutely heightened by the music that James Horner provides, which is, again, very epic, exciting, battle-themed, especially when Achilles lands on the beach to attack Troy in that first go, when he's dueling with Hector, when Troy is under attack. Very goosebump-inducing music because it's very violent as well, very graphic. You don't really know which side you're supposed to be rooting for in Troy, but with everything that's going on, you can't help be pulled in, and that is a lot to do with the music. And of course, I'm stalling because amongst all these, there is, of course, the world-famous Titanic, and everybody knows Titanic. Well, that famous My Heart Will Go On song by Celine Dion, the music that helps create that song, composed by James Horner, and also applied to all the different themes in Titanic, which of course range from all sorts, from the romance, the hymn of the sea, Rose. You've got comedy, where the Jack is sneaking onto the ship in the opening of Titanic, and then of course for the next hour and 20 minutes where the Titanic is sinking and everybody is dying. It's very sad, very moving, and it's that same sort of motif music that James Horner has that is rippling through it all, whether it's exciting or sad. As I said, this would have worked a lot better if I could play you the music, but all this music is readily available if you want to have a look. And I'm sure that these movies are ringing true for some of you, and you don't need me to provide the music to remember what I'm talking about. For our second category, I picked Hans Zimmer. Hans Zimmer is very famous for very heavy, intense, action-packed music. A lot of bass, a lot of drums, percussion, really exciting, edgy of seat music, which also really encompasses the feel of what you're watching. For instance, our first example for Hans Zimmer, I have Pirates of the Caribbean, or Caribbean, depending on what is the correct word. Now, I don't know what I thought pirates sounded like before watching this film, or indeed what a pirate theme would be, but the music that Hans Zimmer wrote for Pirates of the Caribbean, with Captain Jack Sparrow and Captain Barbossa, Will Turner, the Black Pearl, all of that, absolutely encompasses now what I attribute to pirates and pirate shenanigans and pirate shanties. The music is very swelling and engaging, the action themes specifically. Regardless how you feel about the film in any capacity, the music sticks with you. It's very dark and spooky in the supernatural elements of Pirates of the Caribbean. It's very whimsical when the pirates are just going on their shenanigans to try to get treasure or sneak on and off a ship or whatever, and triumphant during sword fights and ship battles. Very memorable stuff. As I mentioned last week, I didn't go too much into it, but Hans Zimmer has really worked well with Christopher Nolan's films. My favorite of the bunch obviously being the Dark Knight trilogy. His theme for Batman is very swelling and overcoming specifically for the story of Bruce Wayne becoming Batman, his rise, his fall, his rise again, his fall. The music where he is just shooting around Gotham City and you're checking in on all the different characters, and the music is just pitter-pattering in the background with that deep percussion, and it's unnerving, it's uneasy, because Gotham City is not a safe place to be. No one lives there comfortably. You're constantly in fear of being mugged, being shot, being attacked, and it's always constantly building in the background until Batman shows his head or the Joker launches an attack or something. And then once things kick off and run in, it's bang, 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 music going wild, and it's absolutely wonderful and engrossing to watch. Not just for these action-packed live-action movies, Hans Zimmer's also done some great work on some animated movies and a lot of animated films as well. Specifically films that people assume are animated for kids, so we don't worry too much about it. Some animated films that have won awards, a lot of that is due to the music that accompanies them. My examples for this one obviously being, well, not obviously, it really depends if you know that Hans Zimmer has worked on these movies. Kung Fu Panda is one of our examples. His take on ninja or kung fu or that sort of oriental music that accompanies the masters of the Furious Five and Po, and as he's learning to become a kung fu master. Specifically, my favorite piece of music is called Uguay Ascends, which may be the main theme for Kung Fu Panda. I'm not exactly sure, but it is very uplifting, even though it is a very sad moment in the film. It really gives you goosebumps listening to it. It absolutely feels correct to the world that has been established in Kung Fu Panda world and Po's way of thinking and life and whatever. Furthermore, everybody loves The Lion King, and who doesn't love the music in The Lion King? The songs in The Lion King are one of the most memorable thing about it, and the background music is one of the most memorable bits about it. Whether it's Simba having to go off on his own and being lost in the desert, or eventually coming back to the Pride Lands and the rise of the king, essentially, as life comes back to the Pride Lands, or even just a simple shot of the seasons changing, going from autumn to winter to spring, and it just feels like it belongs in the world of The Lion King. Nothing I like more than driving somewhere and putting This Is Our Land, which is the main music motif from Hans Zimmer for The Lion King, and it just builds up and up. It's very solemn at the start, obviously, because of all the crazy terribleness that's going on in the film. And then when things start to look up, the music starts to build up again. There's a sense of hope, there's a sense of relief, then action, excitement, and then hooray, everything's good. And you just can't help but feel warm and happy all over. Once you start to realize that these music composers are popping up in your favorite films, you start to get a sense of bias for your favorite composers. My favorite composer is Alan Silvestri. And I'm quick to say that Alan Silvestri might not be the best music composer of all time, but he's worked on a couple of things that I cherish most definitely. Specifically, the Back to the Future trilogy. Now, everybody loves Back to the Future. If you haven't seen Back to the Future, oh my goodness, I'll definitely do an episode on it in the future. But the sound for Back to the Future, the excitement and wonder and fantasy of jumping in that DeLorean and traveling from 1985 to 1955, then shooting through to 2015, then back to 1885. And the music is so exciting and wondrous. You have your opening bit where it's just sort of presenting the scene, and it's exciting to know that you're watching Back to the Future for a start. But then we have our action music, which is when normally the DeLorean is about to travel through time. Something is not going right. They need to fix what they're doing. Otherwise, things are going to go wrong and the time travel is not going to work. And it plays along with the action in the movie. It's like it was written one for the other. In fact, I'm sure it was. Somebody falls down, the music stops. Someone realizes that person has fallen down, shocking part of the music. Builds up when everyone's running for the same position and they don't know who's going to get there first, who's going to live, who's going to die. Wonderful stuff. Back to the Future theme has been with me since I was a young kid, and I cannot help but get excited every time I hear that music. And when I think of Back to the Future, the first thing I think of is the music. Specifically, my bias for Alan Silvestri comes with the Avengers theme for the Avengers. I've heard people say that the Marvel Cinematic Universe doesn't have really memorable music. I can both agree and disagree. I think it's pretty memorable, but I've watched the movies about 1,000 times now, so there's some bias in there for sure. But I do understand that the fact that there's no consistent music for each installment of, say, the Iron Man films or the Thor films or the Captain America films does make it hard to find a truly memorable theme. For the Avengers, on the other hand, when they all come through together, Alan Silvestri created a sound for the team, which is just powerful excitement. It is unbelievable because you're watching a film that you did not believe was possible for the first Avengers, that all these characters are coming together into their own film and they're going to work together. They have something that only all of them together can defeat. And it's going to be powerful, it's going to be challenging, it's going to be hard, but they're going to do it. I believe it's called the Avengers March. It can be whatever it's called, but it sounds incredible. And in each installment of the Avengers, it was used in a way that got me more and more excited every time I watched it. Leading, of course, to a head with Avengers Endgame, with the ultimate battle at the end where everybody comes together at the most hopeless hour for the Avengers. The music swells, it's exciting, it's triumphant, it's powerful, and it makes you think about all the other Marvel films that you've seen before this. It, in a sense, rewards you. It says, you've been here since 2008, you've watched all these superheroes come together, and now they're about to launch into what is probably their final battle. They're finally working together, they've put aside all their differences, they're standing up to an absolutely impossible enemy, and they're going to win. I guarantee you right now, as I've probably said when I've talked about Avengers Endgame in the past, that I will always remember sitting in the cinema watching the film, but it was Alan Silvestri's Avengers March theme in the most climactic part of the movie that rings true to me every time I think back on it and gives me chills to a point where even if I'm not in the mood to watch the whole movie, I will absolutely watch the first 2 hours and 46 minutes to get to that most important, iconic part of the film. I love it. I love Alan Silvestri's work because of Baez. Our fourth category ensures that it doesn't matter how many movies you work on, how many different types of sound you work on. If you find that one specific sound that elevates you to fame and cements what you're working on as one of the most iconic things of all time, then it doesn't matter if you only do that and nothing else. Now, Howard Shore, I'm sure, has done lots of stuff, but he will always be memorable for basically creating the world that is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I've never watched a trilogy and been so blown away by just how the sound for a world in a movie fits it so perfectly. Everything sounds both fantastical because we're in a world of elves and goblins and orcs and all these things, but also hopeful, dark, haunting. It really changes dramatically depending on what part of Middle-earth you are in, as Frodo and Sam go on their quest to destroy the One Ring, and they've got to go through the Mines of Moria, Rohan, Gondor, Shelob's Lair, Mount Doom, all these terrible, exciting places. The music for The Lord of the Rings is the only thing that I have gone to see performed live at the Sydney Opera House. I've seen all three, The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. And I can tell you that the orchestra does not stop from the start of the movies to the end. They are constantly playing, they are constantly providing the feel and the excitement that you are watching. When you think of hobbits, you think of Concerning Hobbits, which is that nice, whimsical, happy music of the Shire, where everything is calm and peaceful, a peaceful life, don't want danger, don't want craziness. When you think of the Riders of Rohan, you think of the strings and the Celtic Scottish music and riding off to battle against insurmountable forces. When you think of Sauron and his forces, you get those heavy beating drums and this sense of this powerful, unstoppable force that is descending on everything that's all hopeful and exciting. And of course, when you think of the fellowship of Frodo and Aragorn and his friends, you get that triumphant teamwork theme that always makes you believe that no matter what they come up against, they're going to stand together and they're going to overcome it. I absolutely recommend the soundtrack for The Lord of the Rings. It is absolutely available on Spotify and YouTube, put that on shuffle. Doesn't matter what music comes on. You will remember the scene that you are listening from. And if you've never seen the film, it will paint a clear enough picture of the feelings that you're supposed to be feeling watching those movies. And our final example, our most obvious example, is memorability. If that's a word. I'm not sure that's a word. Whatever, moving on. Basically, coming up with music that is just so powerful, so magic, so wondrous, so good that it sticks with you and you remember it for years and years after you've seen it. Now, I know when music is supplied for movies, they don't know this is it. This is going to be a thing that's going to be remembered. But each product should be approached like it's going to be that thing, that most memorable music, the best thing you've ever done. And John Williams, in my opinion, has that approach for everything he's done. And he's done such a wide variety of products, whether he's been working on movies set in space, magical fantasy movies, horror suspense movies, adventure, action-packed, anything like that. John Williams has had a hand in it. And 9 times out of 10, he's made the most memorable music from that era. Star Wars. Star Wars continues to remain one of the biggest things in movie history. Up and down, whether you like the sequel trilogy or not, whether you like the prequel trilogy or not, you cannot argue that any of the music in those movies is bad. It is all powerful, original, and it resonates with the movie. Nothing feels like it shouldn't be in a Star Wars movie. And that main Star Wars theme, the moment you sit down to any Star Wars movie, doesn't matter if you're seeing it for the first time or what order you're seeing or whatever, and a long time ago when a galaxy far, far away comes up and then Star Wars shows up, the big swell of the London Symphony Orchestra and the big main Star Wars theme starts. Even if you're watching a Star Wars film that you know you don't like, you cannot help but for the briefest second feel excited, feel warm, feel home, because this is such a famous, remembered piece of music that resonates for everybody. Even if you're not a Star Wars fan, you know the Star Wars music and you can't help but like it, really. If you want to be a stick in the mud and say, no, I'm not a fan of the Star Wars music, fine, let's pick something else that John Williams has done that has stuck with our heads. Harry Potter, for example. Hedwig's theme, that magical, whimsical, I think I want to say it's a piano, I'm not exactly sure, but it's that wizardy theme that spells wonder and the unknown of the wizarding world that Harry Potter and his friends reside in. It absolutely screams Harry Potter now. Any movie that Harry Potter came out, even after John Williams stopped working on them, they worked his main little Hedwig's theme into everything. It is Harry's theme, not Hedwig's theme, essentially. But it absolutely establishes the magic and wonder of wizards and witches and a school of magic and phoenixes and everything else that goes on in those crazy films. And Harry Potter, for 8 films, dominated the box office, dominated people's lives from 2001 to 2011. Mainly for that music, I would have to say. If you want to move on from Harry Potter, the Indiana Jones march, everybody knows the march that accompanies Indiana Jones whenever he's going on an adventure, and it feels adventurous and exciting. Jurassic Park, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, that music when they arrive on Isla Nublar, or where you're taking in the dinosaurs that aren't going to viciously murder you. And even Jaws, even that simple music of swimming around in the ocean and just that dun 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 dun, something's coming, it's building up. It's not too scary, but it's unnerving. And even if you've seen the shark, if you know what's coming, it still makes you on edge. It still worries you. John Williams is my absolute respect. Every time I watch a movie, I can now recognize his sound, but every now and then I'll watch a movie and I'll go, oh, wait a minute. This is John Williams. What does this make? This might be the 24th movie I've seen that John Williams has provided the music for. He's done some great work. He's done some great sounds, and it's really worth having a look. Find your old favorites. Find some music you haven't heard, because for most of the most famous movies that we've seen, a lot of that work is grateful to John Williams for providing the sound. All right, so I'm going to wrap up. I don't know how this episode went. I feel like I just talked and said this is good, that's good. I don't know if I really explained why music is good, but my overall basic point, my main thing I want to have people take away from this is that music in film and in TV as well. Let's not forget the Game of Thrones theme, the Save Me song from Smallville, the Jag theme if you're over 65 and listening to this podcast, or if you're me. Music is absolutely essential and is very important to establishing the identity of a film and its impact on you, its ability to be remembered, to go down in history as significant. Regardless of if the movie is popular or not, it is what helps people identify with what they're watching, to feel the emotions that they're supposed to feel. It tells you what you're supposed to feel. It helps you connect with the characters you're seeing, and it helps you walk away going, I think back on that movie and I can hear the music in my head, and it's helping me remember the bits I liked or even the bits that I did not like. I highly recommend have a look at your favorite films. Think about the music that resonates with you, because I'm sure there is. Have a look to see who the composer is. If you've got a few favorites, have a look to see if there's a connection. Maybe it's done by the same person. Why do you remember music in movies specifically? What is it that has stuck with you for each of the things that you have seen? Thank you for listening to me for this different episode. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you've got something out of it. I will be back next week, and I definitely 100% will be able to provide you with a movie review, a very exciting movie review, a movie that people have been waiting for some time. Yes, it is. I have tickets to Tenet, the big summer blockbuster from Christopher Nolan that's now in spring or autumn, depending on where you are in the world. But I can't wait to see it, and I can't wait to try and review it to you without spoiling it. I hope I like it. I'm pretty sure I will. But until then, thank you as always for listening to me. I love and appreciate you all. You've been spliced in later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.